Okay, there we go. Now we'll just wait for there we go. Okay. And we will push this button here. Cool. Just got an email to tell me that I went live, which I am aware. All right. And that's all good, and that's fine, and we're good. Boom, there we go. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's see here. We've got greetings from sunny Tinley Park, Illinois. Hello from Germany. Hello from Connecticut. Columbus, Ohio. Excuse me. Sunny Glasgow, Scotland. Skane? I'm mispronouncing that. I apologize there, Johan. West Midlands, UK. We've got sunny and pleasant Hudson, Illinois. It rained a bit, but I think it's going to be okay today. Got Japan, Montreal, Germany. Mumbling has commenced. It has. Sunny central Scotland. That's a lot of fun to say. Northern Italy. Glorious lands of Iberia. Nice. Got bright and beautiful Junction City, Wisconsin. I believe I've been through there. I think so. Connecticut, Italy, Quebec. Hi from Switzerland. Finally able to watch. Well, glad to have you. Absolutely. Intermittently sunny Colchester. Colchester? I think it's Colchester. It's certainly not Colchester, though. I'm sure of that. Let's see here. Switzerland, Warwickshire, Edmonton. Sunday night in Thailand. Nice. Great morning from Edmonton and Cincinnati and Southampton and Elkhorn, Wisconsin and North Salt Lake, Utah, Portland, Oregon. Next door in Minnesota, we got Italy, Owatonna. That sounds like Minnesota, definitely. Guadalajara, Edinburgh. Matthew Sears says, "Hello from the other side." I think that's an Adele reference, even though I don't really know a lot about Adele. New London, Connecticut, painting flash gits for my girl's birthday. Let's get after it, folks. Absolutely. That shallow depth of field kills my view of Nick, true star of the show. I had to move him actually a little bit today because when I first sat down, he had been shifted this way and he was behind me. So I'm like, well, I gotta move him so you can see him, you know. He's doing fine. I'm trying to think the last time that he's had a trip out of the house. It's been some time, but you know. Morning from Denver, trying to power through painting some models I don't love so I can fully enjoy the ones I do. You know, sometimes that happens. You know, I can understand that. Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Yo from Pittsburgh. Abilene, Texas. Greetings from stinking hot Kelowna. I don't know where that is, but I'm sorry that it's hot. Germany, Ontario. Finished priming Death Guard Kill Team. Nice, nice run. Yeah, I haven't. What did I do yesterday? I was just mainly building some. I built some models and I worked on a little bit of other stuff. Yeah, Baldwin, Wisconsin, Brooklyn, New York. Hey, 12 Neef, how you doing? Let's see here. Uperland, nice. That's the UP, the Upper Peninsula, for those of you who aren't from around here, which is probably many of you. Anyway, the Upper Peninsula, when you look at the state of Michigan, it's two parts. There's the bottom part, which kind of looks like a mitten, and then there's this upper part up here that's like this, and that's the Upper Peninsula, which is actually technically attached to Wisconsin, but it's technically not ours, so, you know, that's how it works. Good morning from Jax, Florida. How y'all doing? Anyone got any Stargrave warbands going? Well, that's what I started working on yesterday, as a matter of fact. But we'll talk about that in a little bit, though. Yeah, absolutely. I wish it was hotter because then it's cicada time. Matthew Sears does love the cicadas. We were talking about that last night. I was able to buy my first 3D printer, an Elegoo Neptune 2, and started printing terrain for Stargrave. Nice. I have gotten myself a Elegoo Saturn. It took some work, but I did get one. I have not, as of yet, got it set up yet. I've been real busy with the secret project and all that stuff, but all will be revealed soon. I've been saying it's going to be late May or early June, and about last week we determined it's actually going to be late May. So it's not going to go into June. As far as we can tell right now, we're going to be good. So yeah, it looks like very soon you folks will hear about it. The secret project will be a secret project no more, should be, by the next time that we do one of these every other Sunday shows. So you don't have that long to wait. So that's good. Hey, Nick Evans, how you doing? Finally made it for the start of this stream. Absolutely. Let's see here. About to do a hobby shopping trip to Dallas, Texas from Tyler, Texas. Following your show and liking it a long time. Well, that's good. Thank you very much. Mornings from Winneconne. How you doing? First time to catch you live. First of thanks for getting me back in the hobby since the early 90s. New painting Death Guard. Nice. Yeah, Death Guard are a lot of fun to paint. I do really enjoy doing it. I kind of wish I had more excuses to do it. I mean, I could do another kill team, but I'm not going to do I have to sneeze. I apologize. Allergies are a little rough today. I don't see myself building a Death Guard army, for 40k. I don't see myself really building any armies for 40k. But yeah, I do enjoy the Death Guard, so I could see making myself another kill team potentially for that. That would work. The new plastic cowboy sprue from Great Escape Games was sculpted by one of the sculptors that works on Frostgrave and Stargrave. Oh, that's cool. I don't know that I'm familiar with Great Escape Games, but yeah, I did. The boxes are downstairs, but yeah, I did finally get my Stargrave minis, the plastic ones from North Star, and I started building some of those yesterday. Any experience with Rangers of Shadowdeep? Yeah, I've got it maybe within arm's reach. I think it might be in this pile over here. This is the one that I do have is the self-published Joe McCullough version, as opposed to the soon-to-be-released, or I think maybe even released, Modiphius version. Modiphius basically decided they would publish it because I think and I don't know this for sure, but since he did Frostgrave and then he decided he wanted to do this game, Osprey maybe just was like, yeah, we don't want to publish it for some reason, so he's like, cool, I'll self-publish it, and it did real well on wargamevault.com and all that kind of stuff being self-published, and then Modiphius was like, well, we'll publish it, and so he's working with them on that as well too. So but yeah, it's interesting. It's a cool game. It's a little bit more. It's got a lot more solo play possibilities, and it's also a lot more curated to some degree. It's not so much just like, oh well, there's like here's a scenario and but it's like, here's a scenario, but you need like 2 gnolls and you need 3 skeletons and you need this and 22 zombies. Well, not that many, but it's very specific in its scenarios, which for some folks can be troublesome because they may be like, I don't have any of those. So you have to either swap things out or start building the painting. If there's a miniatures company who makes any drop troop shuttles to use for Frostgrave scenery and missions, thanks. I was honestly just thinking about that because I saw a post on the Stargrave Facebook group maybe yesterday. Because I've seen people been like, hey, I'm working on my spaceship for Stargrave, and I'm like, why do you need a spaceship for Stargrave? But as it turns out, like, a lot of people are doing it, because it's just maybe sort of fun, and you can use it as a piece of scenery, and also some of the scenarios in Stargrave kind of like, at least one of the scenarios like kind of requires there to be a couple of ships as scenery, so I can understand that. I like the concept of, if you're going to go through all the time, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to like sort of build and construct yourself, both originally like list and kind of mentally, and then physically by making models, make yourself a team for a campaign style game, specifically something like Stargrave. I like the idea of kind of thinking about like, well, how do they get around? Well, in this situation, they would fly around on a ship. Now, most likely you're not going to build, if there's like a dozen, or not even a dozen, if there's 10 people, you're probably not going to have an entire, like the ship that, like, think about like Firefly, right? If you've ever seen the show Firefly, there's Serenity, which is the big spaceship that they go around in, but they rarely ever take that down. I mean, sometimes they take it down onto the surface, but they also have these little shuttles. And so the shuttle thing is, I think, more the thing that that I've been thinking about recently. Whether or not there are specific companies that do that, I know that Mantic has got a couple of interesting spaceships for their Warpath sci-fi game. You might want to take a look at those. I mean, Games Workshop makes spaceships and stuff like that you could probably use, but they're very obviously Games Workshop-y. Like they got them covered in skulls and all that kind of junk. So, otherwise, take a look at My Mini Factory as well, because I bet you'll be able to find something if you're interested in 3D printing, or if you have a friend who's a 3D printer, that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Rotocasting some new scenery. Nice. Morning from Toronto, the center of the universe. Having played Cursed City and working on Warcry Defiled Ruins. Nice. Went to my local DIY store for a simple item and spent almost an hour looking at items to use as Stargrave terrain. Yeah, I think for most of my Stargrave terrain, when I get to that point, it's just going to be, frankly, the stuff that I've been printing off for Star Wars Legion. I think I'm going to go with basically, we've landed another desert planet, because it just seems to be easier a little bit. So there's that. Let's see here. Morning from Missouri. Picked up the Wayward 8 posse for Wild West Exodus for Stargrave. Super excited. Yeah, I could see something like that. If you want to go with like a little bit more of like a Firefly kind of theme, I could definitely like that. Working on the Cursed City minis. I saw the skeletons and zombies in the promo for the new Age of Sigmar undead army. Yeah. Excuse me. I feel like the new skeletons are barely different from the skeletons that come in Age of Sigmar, or in Age of Sigmar. The new skeletons are barely different from the ones that come in Cursed City, but they are not the same, though. But I like the fact that they're basically the same style, and you can get more of them, which is nice. The zombies, I honestly like the zombies better, the ones that they just released or showed off yesterday, than the ones for Cursed City, because the Cursed City ones all have their like the big tombstone on their back and whatever, and I know there's a story behind it and all that stuff. I just don't like the visual look of it. But the I don't know, the ones that are going to be coming out for Soulblight or whatever, they look pretty good, and only a few of them have kind of that stuff on their back and stuff, so that's nice. Mantic do a pretty solid dropship for Warpath. Yeah, Greg, that's the one I was thinking of. I think it looks kind of cool, but I could also see myself maybe printing something. The Rocket Pod Scout from Bombshell would be great. I don't know if I'm familiar with that one. I wonder if there'd be a Star Wars. There's not really a Star Wars vehicle I could think of for Legion. I mean, that would work well as a shuttle. Most everything that you see is like they got like the snow speeder type thing, but yeah, I'd have to take a look. Go to get the Tau Start Collecting Box for Kill Team and just paint some Tau models up. Heck, may even start a 2,000 point army if I enjoy painting them. See, that's the trick. That's how they get you. And that's what they're looking for. They're like, well, if we can at least get you in the door with Kill Team, then maybe you'll make a full 40k army. And that's the way that works. Make terrain from cicadas. Tyranids, maybe. I could see that. Good afternoon from Scotland. I hope everyone is safe and well. I spent the morning working out how much it would cost to get a great unclean one and all the paints I need for it. My wallet is crying. Yeah, that can be an expensive model. I mean, that's, the big ones. That's the way it works. Ooh. Neon Seraphim says, painting Cursed City, the fact that I can't get them again is making me have trouble committing the paint to a miniature. Again, if you're like, it turns out I painted these guys and I don't like the paint job, you can always strip the paint off and then start over again. That will work. Going to use the old Necromunda terrain from the 90s starter set. Interesting, yeah. Hasbro Hero Quest mini sculpts are terrible. I didn't look real closely at the whole new Hero Quest thing. I know a lot of people were super excited about it, but I never really played the original, so I don't have that kind of nostalgia for it, I guess, But, I don't know. I kind of don't trust Hasbro to make miniatures, at least at this point. I don't know why. Picked up 5 parsecs from home after the last Sunday show. Nice. Yeah, it's an interesting system. I think it's cool. Legion has a Winnebago shuttle coming. Yeah, I think I've seen that. Is it going to be, well, I mean, I guess it would be big enough for maybe like up to 10 28 millimeter folks to ride around in. But the pictures I've seen made me feel like it would be a pretty tight, it would be tight quarters in there. You know what I mean? But that's maybe fine. It's just a shuttle. You're not supposed to be, lounging around. Let's see here. Gaddis Gaming, how you doing? Good morning. We just recently got the Underworld starter and dragged my brother into playing. Now he wants to paint his warband. Nice. That's you're doing the work. There you go. Splitting my time between a Steel Legion kill team and a Tau kill team. Nice. I have a Tau kill team built. I think I need to texture their bases, and then eventually I will paint them. And you'll probably eventually see it on, I was going to say on Steam, but that's not right. Twitch is what I meant to say. You'll see it eventually on Twitch, I think. Though, I got to be honest, right now at least, I'm not crazy about adding even more stuff to Kill Team, because we don't know where Kill Team's going right now, so I'm kind of a little hesitant, which is why I've been spending more time on stuff for Warcry and other games along those ideas. 3D renders were okay, but they show off some production samples and they weren't even close to the 3D renders. Well, that's a bummer, yeah. Action figure Star Wars ships are undersized for that scale, but better 28mm. That's the thing about spaceships, to some degree, is the scale doesn't matter as much. If you're like, well, this should be technically a fighter for miniature, or for, action figures that are this big, but if they built it right and you can't, like, see a chair, like in the cockpit and stuff like that, then it could be resized for almost any kind of model, because the scale is a little fluid, let's just say that. If you can definitely see, like on an X-Wing, you can see a cockpit, and you can see the seat there where a person would sit, and you'd be like, okay, a dude this tall is not going to fit in there, so that's not going to work great as a shuttle, let's say, or anything along those lines. But there are probably other ships that you'd be like, well, as long as the windshield isn't, necessarily super visible or whatever, that could be any size, you know what I mean? DJ Todd P. Harris, how you doing? Morning minions, greetings from Columbus, Ohio. Let's see here. Scotia Grendel do a small dropship shuttle called the Corvus VTOL. It's pretty small, but it's not too expensive. The model is resin with some metal accessories. Interesting. My wife insists I invite you over to Minnesota for a Kill Team game sometime. Well, Triant, I appreciate that. Man, when was the last time I was in Minnesota? It's been some time. Gosh, I don't remember the last time I was in Minnesota. I mean, I've been to Minnesota. I just don't remember if that was the last time I was in Minnesota. I might have been there more frequently, but it's been a good long time. I got a friend who used to live there. Now he lives in Seattle, and I visited him in the early 2000s or maybe even the late 90s. I'm still building and loving my kill teams, and made some starter teams for me to teach my friends. That is the way, as the Mandalorian says, or maybe he says this is the way. Whatever. Now I'm starting some Legions of Nagash for Warcry, because why not? Yeah, I mean, that's, I think there's a big benefit to sitting down and, in a perfect world, you paint one warband, crew, kill team, whatever, for a game, and then you go and you play with your friends who've been doing the same, and then that's fine. But in many situations, especially with lesser-known games, stuff that's not Games Workshop, things like that, you have a tendency to generally have to kind of usually build and paint probably two small forces, which is why I still like skirmish games, and I talk about that all the time. And then that way, it's easier for you to show up at your friend's house and be like, hey, I mean, be invited. Don't just like show up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and knock on the window and say, hey, you want to play Kill Team? Because that's not going to go well. But like, when you come over to play something or whatever, or they come over to your house, then you can just be like, look, I'm going to show you how to play this. You can take these guys, I'll take these guys, or vice versa, or whatever. And then it just works a little bit better that way. If it's a situation, I mean, I've had people before that are like, oh, I built this force for this game that almost no one's ever heard of, and then no one ever wants to play with me. You're like, well, you just have one. You're basically telling them, look, if you want to play with me, you should go and build this force, and they don't know if they want to do that. Now, with some skirmish games, some kind of like miniatures agnostic games, you could suggest to a person, hey, are you interested in playing? All you need is like maybe 6 skeletons and a guy that looks like this and a guy that's maybe, or whatever. And very frequently, if they've been playing miniature games for a while, they can probably dig through and proxy stuff, and that's fine. That's kind of the benefit of games that don't have a model line, is that you can use whatever kind of models you want. But there are also there's a lot of fun, I think, to some degree, in being able to also sometimes custom build stuff specifically for the game, and to kind of tailor it that way. And I like that stuff. So They have a new Necromunda box. Yeah, there's a new launch box that's got Eschers versus Delok, I think. I think it's Eschers versus Delok. I don't need it, having gotten the old one as a birthday present. However, wonder why they didn't add a different gang, but Escher would have picked Van Sar. Yeah, that I was surprised by that too. I'm like, you guys already launched one with Escher versus Goliath, and now you're going Escher with versus Delok. I would have thought Van Sar or even like Caudor, any one of those would have been kind of cool too, but let's see here. The Corvus is very small, works well with older minis, but you stick a Primaris next to it, it really suffers. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. That's one of the benefits, I think, to 3D printing is that you can get like a model, you're like, oh, this is a cool model for a dropship, and then you can just be like, well, it's not big enough, and then you can just kind of go and like enlargenate it. You press the enlargenate button, and then you can print it, and there you go. Now, there are certain 3D models that don't really have enough detail to be enlargenated too much. So there's that concern as well. You're just like, well, now everything looks weird and kind of Duplo. You know what I mean? Like, you remember Duplo blocks, which were like Legos for like little kids. So they were just like giant Legos kind of. Yeah, you can kind of get that sometimes if you take a model in 3D printing, I think, and scale it up too much, then all of a sudden the details are also much more big, scaled up, enlarged, embiggened, and then that looks weird. So, it depends on the model. And it depends on how much you do it, too. Good morning from Peoria, Illinois. So I started a Drakari kill team and ended up with a full army. I'm drowning in plastic, putting them together today. And they're very pointy, so watch out for that, too. You don't want to poke yourself. I think for most games, you have to be really into it and be a hobby hero around it to get other people to play. At least that's the way it works in my local game store. Frankly, for the non-GW stuff, that is generally the case. When you hear about a game that that's still like a bigger company, even sometimes, like Weird Games with Malifaux, with like Mantic with Kings of War Vanguard, Warpath, any of those kind of things, Dead Zone, Dead Zone, yeah, Dead Zone. A lot of times if you hear about like a local area that just everybody there plays Dead Zone, it's because somebody started it there. It's not because of, the marketing. It's not because of, it's either the store owner was like, this is a cool game and I want to sell a bunch of it, or somebody coming into the store was like, this is a cool game, I've been buying it elsewhere because the store doesn't sell it, or I've been ordering it through the store, maybe, if they're a good person. And then you get people to start to play, and then the store owner is like, well, we'll start carrying this in stock if you guys are going to play it. And they're like, yeah. And then sometimes it just goes and it happens, and then you'll go to a local shop or something, someplace you've never been before if you're traveling or whatever, and you'll just see like a giant wall of like Privateer Press, and you're like, huh, like nobody plays that where I live. And then here they're like, oh, that's what we all play. It's awesome. And so you get these pockets all over the world to some degree, and very frequently within our industry, the pockets that are non-Games Workshop are generally started by somebody. Somebody was the instigator. Some people like to call them alpha gamers. I'm not a big fan of that term, but I think instigator is a good one because it's basically just someone who's just instigating it and saying, hey, you know what? And so you get those in different areas. Enlargenate, I thought it was Biggerizer. I like Enlargenate better. I don't know why. I wish they would release a set of dice, templates, cards, etc. for Necromunda so you can play without having to buy the box. I think they do. Well, at least the dice I know that they do. I've seen the dice in stores before. Necromunda dice. They do sell those. Templates, you might look on their website, but I don't know. They might sell the templates separately. And then the cards, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you need the cards. Sometimes the cards are a nice to have, but not a need to have. You know what I mean? But I think that they sell the cards maybe even separately too. I'm not sure. I swear to God, I've seen cards though in the stores. I think at Flying Phoenix, I think I've seen the Escher cards and the Goliath cards. They haven't sold, but they've been there for a long time. So I think that they do make them. Yeah. Hello from Dublin. How you doing? Repurposing my Necromunda minis for Stargrave. See, that's the other super cool thing. I really enjoy being able to like take models from this game, use them in that game, kit bash them, all that kind of stuff. It's dope, I believe is what the kids say. looking into Stargrave simply due to Kill Team being stuck. I still like Kill Team a good deal. Here's my issue, though. This is the itch that Stargrave is scratching for me. The campaign system for Kill Team is not great. I've played it. It's very samey. There's not much, like, basically you have to roll to see if people get hurt in between, and then you just play until eventually someone gets enough points or whatever. And it's just not got the growth potential as much as I would like, I think. And when I say growth potential, I mean your Kill Team in the situation. It seems like there are things that can kind of bring them down a little bit, but there's not a lot that brings them up or does like really interesting kind of cool things that way. And that is bothersome to me. One of the super cool things that I noticed about Stargrave when I was working on building a warband, like, do I have my iPad? I think I have my iPad. So I was working on this list, and I was thinking to myself, well, gosh, what happens if I get like a new, like if I get some sort of super cool gun, right, in between missions, and then now my first mate has a different weapon, you know what I mean? Then that's the thing that drives me nuts sometimes about campaign games, is then you're like, oh, well, now I have to, rebuild the model or make a copy of the model or do something weird like that or whatever. And the smart thing that Stargrave does is that if you're a recruit, and a recruit always has a pistol, you'll never have anything but a pistol. You're always pistol guy or pistol gal. And so even if you find like a super cool advanced weapon, you just get a better pistol, or you just get a more powerful pistol, or whatever. It's not, so you don't have to ever go through and go, oh, well, this guy got a rocket launcher now, so I got to glue a rocket launcher to his back or something like that. Oops, dropped my iPad. But yeah, no, you don't have to do that. So yeah, I just was starting, and you can't really read this very well. There we go. So I just was starting to work on my list on my iPad, and I was just like, the thing that I like about this game, in my opinion, Stargrave and other games, Planet 28, all this kind of stuff, is the ability to build the force, and you kind of get a little story in your head. I've been kicking around the idea of making a video recently about like why I don't particularly like role-playing games for myself. Like, I'm not saying that they're bad or anything like that. I'm just like, I don't enjoy playing them so much. But I love campaign games that have a little bit of a role-playing aspect. And when I say the role-playing aspect, I don't mean actually playing a role. Like, well, now we're going to go into the tavern and ask the tavern keeper why the city is all dark, and this, we're going to have this conversation and stuff like that. That stuff for me, I don't know why, but it just doesn't. I don't enjoy it. Not quite sure why. But the more role-playing aspect that they refer to kind of in video games. So it's not so much you're playing a role, it's the more like leveling and upgrading and that kind of stuff. When you're playing a video game, you're rarely ever playing a role, because you're sitting there on your couch with a controller in your hand and you're moving your guy around and whatever, and shooting mole rats and Fallout or whatever. But then you get experience and you level up your powers into this, and you put points into that and that kind of stuff. And like that portion of the role playing I like in campaign games. So thinking about why I have this group of people, this crew together, and the captain's a veteran and my first mate is a rogue, and like why they would be like that. And again, it's mainly all headcanon, you know what I mean? But I don't want to just be like, okay, it would be most efficient if I built this way. I'm like, I want to mix together sort of the headcanon of why my crew is doing this, and also what kind of modeling opportunities does this give me. And then as the game goes on, the more I can kind of upgrade and tweak and all that kind of stuff without, again, having to remodel anything is, for me, a huge benefit. I think it's super fun. Let's see. Has anyone tried the Hadley's Hope Aliens game? My store has one, but it wasn't sure if it was $60. I haven't heard of that, I don't think. For Stargrave and 5 parsecs, using figures from Blackstone, Necromunda, and Corvus Belli Infinity. Yeah, I could see Infinity working with some specific models for both of those games easily, yeah. Hello from Texas. I've been collecting GW stuff since the late 80s. I miss the metal heft to the minis. Do you have a lot of the old minis from GW? Not particularly. I gotta be honest, I'm not. I mean, metal's okay. I don't like. It depends. Metal that is maybe like a metal figure that's maybe one or two pieces is fine. More of the early Infinity models that were metal, where you're looking at this model is a dozen pieces, I am not on board. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think if you watched Friday's video on YouTube, I was talking about painting the base rims. And at one point I was showing the difference between a resin sculpted base and a regular plastic base, and how the base is hollow on the underside of a plastic base, but it's flat and smooth on the underside of a resin base. The model that I used for the resin base in that example is this old Infinity model. He was like a mercenary, and he was a promo guy that you only got if you bought this specific Battle Foam Infinity bag back in like the early 2010s. And then you got this model. And evidently, he's sort of rare. I was talking to a guy who plays Infinity. He's like, oh, you still have that? I'm like, yeah. I nearly died putting it together. It was, seriously, he's like easily a dozen pieces. Just a giant pain in the butt. So, yeah, that I don't like in metal. There are plenty of good metal models out there. For me, the heft, the weight to it has never been a big deal. I don't know why. Honestly, if anything, I kind of like the lighter models because when I drop them, I'm less likely to chip the paint. Whereas a metal model, I'm more likely to chip the paint. So let's see here. In my head, I have this idea of a core of like Skitari and Tech Priests with some Vansar or Orlog hanging around for a Stargrave team. That'd be great. Yeah, you could easily do something cool like that. Because like with the Skitari and all that kind of stuff, when you're picking your captain, the choices you have for captain are Biomorph, which wouldn't really work that well with the Skitari necessarily. Cyborg, that's basically probably what you would pick. There's also Mystic, Robotics Expert, that could also work. Rogue, probably not. Psionicist, no, probably not. Techer, maybe, kind of. It's like big into tech. And then Veteran. Those are your main choices. Those are your big choices, the choices that you have for captain. And then those are also the same choices you have for first mate. And then, but they don't have to be the same, which is also nice too, because in Frostgrave, basically the apprentice had to be the same as the wizard. And that's a nice change that I like in Stargrave, is that they didn't do that. They made it so you can kind of really customize your warband or your crew even more in that situation. So yeah, I could see that. That'd be very cool. I've been playing a bunch of Frostgrave in my FLGS and loving it. Would be awesome to get a proper campaign going. Yeah, the campaigns are very cool for it. What is your opinion on historical wargaming? I got into Flames of War for a hot minute because a bunch of friends of mine did. So again, we've got that instigator thing again, and I didn't. It just didn't stick for me. I don't know. I was interested for a bit, and then it didn't work. I think my main issue is with most historical gaming, especially if it's like relatively recent historical. I don't generally personally like to play games that happened to someone's grandpa, or something like that. It's, like that to me is not a game. That actually happened, like Stargrave, Warhammer, all that stuff. None of that junk happened. Now, if it's an alternate history, like World War II, where, yeah, you got Thompson machine guns and, Sherman tanks, sure, but the Sherman tanks have got plasma guns on them, and the Thompson machine guns are being carried by werewolves or whatever. Well, that's cool. Like that I'm interested in. But actual, real, like, historical, again, and if it's like Visigoths versus the Carpathians or whatever, well, that I don't, probably no one's grandpa was a Visigoth. Maybe, I don't know, but then probably a Highlander, and then that's a whole different story at that point, so I don't know. But I think that's my own personal issue kind of with historical gaming. Like, I'm not even particularly interested these days in like World War II video gaming, like, because I've thought about it. Like, my grandfather was too old to be in World War II, and I think, well, he I don't know why. Well, he was born in 1899. My grandfather was, so he could have technically been in World War I, but was not. and I don't know why. Anyway, well, he only would have been 15, I guess, when it started. So anyway, whatever. But he wasn't in World War II either. And so, but I've just thought about in the past, like if you're like sitting there playing a video game, especially with the high fidelity and amazing sound design and textures and all that stuff in video games these days on a big screen TV, and like, you know, your grandfather's sitting there for whatever reason, like, I don't know, he's over visiting and it's Christmas and you're playing a video game and you're shooting people in the face and stuff like that, as one does. I would just be concerned about, like, I don't know, potentials for flashbacks or all kinds of things like that. So that's why I like sci-fi and fantasy, and I'm generally not that big of a fan of historical. And I don't begrudge anyone who likes it. It's just a personal preference, you know? I mean, that's just for me. So anyway, I guess that's my thing. I don't want to be the main character. I want to watch all these other characters on their adventures in comparison to miniature games versus RPGs. I get that. Sure, absolutely. Let's see here. Headcanon, also known as D.B. Cooper Imaginings, directed towards gaming. Great term. Received Stargrave miniatures from the Nick Starter, currently converting Genesis miniatures for soldiers, mercenaries, and Terminators for robots. Nice. Yeah, I'm going to probably use one of the new Star Wars... There's like a Star Wars robot or droid. Star Wars Legion. Is it K2SO? No, I don't know. It's one of the... I forget exactly which robot it is or which droid it is, but I think it's from maybe Rogue One or one of the other movies. But there's like a model for it now from Star Wars Legion, and I'm like, I'm going to use that as a Stargrave model because it's from a faction, or I think it's from the timeline that I don't play for Star Wars Legion. I play like the original Galactic Civil War stuff with Stormtroopers versus Rebels, and I don't play First Order. Do they even have First Order? Yeah, they must. But I don't play droids versus clones or anything kind of stuff like that, so I don't mind taking that model, since I'm not going to use it in Legion, and then using it for something else, which is fine. The quad bike riders from the Jackals from the Genestealer cult make a great start for an astronaut-style crew. Oh, I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. Do you like the leveling system in Cursed City? I haven't played Cursed City. I don't probably see myself doing so. The models, I like the models a lot, which is why I'm glad I have the box, but I don't, yeah. My issue with metal models is that I have a hard time distinguishing mold lines from details. Yeah, sometimes metal models, not always. A lot of new metal models are 3D designed, and then they're, I think, a lot cleaner, and you get more detail. And it depends on the company too. Like honestly, the metal models from Rec Age, if you can still find them someplace here and there. I know there are still places like well, I was going to say the War Store, but I don't think the War Store is in business anymore. But I think probably even Miniature Market and places like that, you might still be able to find some Rec Age models. I always thought the sculpts on those were very clean, but there are plenty of metal models out there where that sculpts are not clean, and you're like, what is that? Is that a pouch? What is he got a goiter? What is that a mold line? I can't tell. It's just, yeah. And that makes it hard to paint when you can't tell what the heck the thing is you're trying to paint, you know what I mean? But I've painted a bunch of Wreckage models, and I always had a good time with those. Who else? Honestly, especially the newer Infinity models are very clean, and they're also, like, again, computer sculpted and then, made out of metal, but they are very clean and easy to see this is a this and this is that and that kind of stuff. Do you play Zone Raiders at all? And how did you build your campaign team? So for Zone Raiders, I own it, and I started going through to try to figure out, what I wanted to build. But then it's one of those games where, like, I don't know anybody else around here who plays it. I know some people who play it. I know Blake from the last podcast. No, not last podcast. Life After the Cover Save. Most of those podcasts start with L, and then it messes me up. Life After the Cover Save podcast. Like, he's into it as well, but he lives in California, so I'm in Wisconsin, so that's very far away. Yeah, I would like to try it out. I think it'd be fun to play. I played a demo of it at LVO, and then I bought the book, and then I was like, cool, and then it just hasn't, because other things have gotten in the way, like I said, Kill Team, and then Stargrave, and Planet 28, and I've been building different groups for different stuff like that, so there's that. My 12th great-grandpa might have been a Visigoth, sure. I got pulled into an Ancients game with Romans versus Gauls using the Warlord rules, which was quite fun. The games are fun. Don't get me wrong. I think Bolt Action is a great rule set. which is why I love the fact that there's Conflict 47, because it's basically the same rule set, but there's laser tanks and werewolves and power armor and stuff like that in there. And I think that's that. I don't know. That's just a personal thing. That's something I kind of need, though. Do you still do live on Twitch? I do. I am generally I do Monday nights, 7 p.m. Central Time. So that is, I think it's like 1 in the morning GMT. And then I also do Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is like 4 GMT, I think, 4 p.m. GMT. So yeah, I do that usually for 3 hours. Right now I'm working on 4 heroes and the bad skeleton boss guy from Cursed City. And I'm getting heading towards finished on them. So there's maybe a couple more streams, not episodes, a couple more streams of that particular show. So Legion doesn't have First Order. Huh. Maybe I'm thinking of Star Wars X-Wing. There's a poster at the shop that's got it's got all the different symbols on it and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's X-Wing I'm thinking of. Let's see here. Matthew Steer says, we tried not to do multi-part. Yeah, I mean, multi-part metal is difficult. So, I mean, admittedly, you can't get crazy, super cool, dynamic poses sometimes without going multi-part. But sometimes, here's the thing, and this is off topic completely. I generally want my miniatures to look like they're in a fight. Like, I want them to be, like, pointing a gun or holding a gun like this, like they're about to point the gun, or they're doing, you know what I mean? If, like miniatures that look like they're on the phone, or they're, like, rifling through their bag or something like that, I'm like, that guy doesn't really look like he's in a fight. It's just a weird personal thing. Like, if they're holding their gun, like over their shoulder and just sort of standing there at a jaunty angle, you know, and having a cigarette, I'm like, that guy's not in a battle. He's in between battles. And so I always like them. So a dynamic, like super crazy posed model or whatever sometimes is not, in my opinion, as effective as a model who is holding a gun or a model who is like doing a thing. Yeah, you can do a sculpt without making them have to look crazy. Like the sculpts for Malifaux, they're great, they're really interesting, but a lot of them are also really a tough pain in the butt to build. And sometimes you're like, is that person fighting? What is that person doing? You know? And so anyway, that's my own personal preference. So yeah, I like the Wreckage models quite a bit. I know your point on RPGs, but I solo play and has helped a bunch this last 18 months. Love the show. Well, thank you. Yeah, and again, this is not for everybody. I'm not telling you that RPGs are bad or anything like that at all. I think it's an issue for me is that I have a hard time like acting. You know what I mean? Like sitting there and be like, okay, well, we're gonna, I don't know what it is. It's weird. It's my own hang up. Let's just say that. Let's see here. Completely agree about Kill Team's campaign issue. So much potential loss for narrative. You're forced to homebrew to make it decent. Yeah, and again, that's the big benefit of tabletop wargaming is that you can homebrew. It's really hard to homebrew video games. You know what I mean? Like, it can be done. Obviously, there's mods out there, but you have to be usually part of a team to do it well, or you have to be really super dedicated. At the very least, you have to be programmer smart, which is a thing. And so, yeah, whereas like saying, okay, we're going to make this house rule for our game, or we're going to completely build even our own kind of campaign system for this game that has a janky one, that's not nearly as hard, in my opinion, as actually, writing a mod. So there's that. Reaper metal models are fantastic. They come in one piece and have great detail. Currently painting up a couple of their wizards for Frostgrave. Some of them are, yes, are quite good. There are certain sculptors like Bobby Jackson, who sculpts for Reaper, I think does amazing work. And it's gotten to the point where a lot of times I can be like, I bet that's sculpted by Bobby Jackson. And the thing that's cool about Reaper is they generally put on the cardboard thing on the back of the blister pack, they generally put who the sculptor is. So there's a lot of times I can see him hanging there on the pin at the game store and be like, that's a really cool sculpt. I like that. I have a suspicion it's Bobby Jackson. And then I very frequently write. So I got to meet him at, I think, Adepticon a couple of years ago. So that was cool. I might pick up some Star Wars Legion super battle droids to use for Stargrave. Oh, yeah. No, those would be cool. Yeah. Like the skinny battle droids, I think, from what I've heard, the skinny battle droids are a bit of a pain in the butt to build, and they're very delicate. But the super battle droids, they're like the guys with the kind of broader chests, and they do the thing with the arm and they shoot. Yeah, I can see that. That's kind of cool. Zone Raiders looks really cool. I love the setting. Zone Raiders has got a super interesting, cool setting. It is, I don't want to say out there, but it's kind of out there. So the concept of Zone Raiders, for those of you who don't know, is basically there's this thing known as a Dyson sphere, and it's a concept that at some point a society will get so technologically advanced that they can build a giant structure that goes around a star so as to absorb all of the star's energy. And then that there's a benefit to that because now you got lots of energy or whatever. So the idea is that this has already happened. Humans have evolved to a point where we got so smart, so technologically advanced that we built this thing basically around a star. It doesn't necessarily need to be Earth or our sun, Sol, whatever, but it's some star. And those particular humans have gone so post-human, they're basically singularities in that they've basically uploaded themselves into the hardware of this Dyson sphere and etc. Great. On the other hand, there are also humans who basically kind of tagged along and sort of were stowaways and are living in the layers of this giant Dyson sphere around the planet, and that's who you play. And there's been weird evolutions that have gone off into different directions and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. So the different factions are all different and weird and squirrely. And I got to be honest, the hardest part for me is sometimes reading some of the factions and going, I don't know how the heck I'm going to model that. And that's, I think, the one thing that holds me back from Zone Raiders is that it's really interesting. I love the story and all that kind of stuff, but I look at them. There are no models for it because it's model agnostic, which I'm totally on board for. But I'm like, I don't know how to model this particular faction, and it's so, yeah. But I do want to, at the very least, I want to build a board for it because I bought some MDF stuff to do that with. Because the other thing that what you're playing, the thing that's interesting with the gameplay is that this machine is not designed for people to be living in. They just happen to be doing it kind of surreptitiously. So there's no OSHA regulations and railings, and there are every once in a while these kind of robot sentinels come along and they're like, hey, there's something going on in sector 12 and whatever, and then it turns out it's people living there who've been living there for four generations, and then that can be sometimes some of the battles and stuff like that. So like I said, it's a really super cool concept. I really dig it. The limiting factor for me is trying to figure out, two things. Number one, trying to figure out how to build a warband that would make me happy, and number two, also not knowing anybody who plays it. So maybe once I decide to finally build that board, then I'll try to figure out how to build two warbands and then try to trick people into playing it, which is fine too. Yeah. Let's see here. I'm only playing Legion when I can get Gungans with Jar Jar as my general. I swear to God somebody 3D printed a bunch of Gungans for Legion, but yeah, I don't know. My 9-year-old has my bolt action stuff out right now. He is complaining that I do not have more stuff built. Well, you could tell your 9-year-old that they got time. They could build some stuff. Do you know when Game 4 is going to come out of hibernation? I don't yet. We are looking at summer. We are looking at, it could be fall. The issue is, and I had somebody email me actually just about this recently, and they're like, well, here in Australia, we're nearly back to normal, our cases are very low and all that kind of stuff. Is there a possibility you could just turn it back on for Australia? Which would be cool to be able to, but I don't, when we launched it, the initial plan when we launched it was we were just going to launch it, I think, just in the US. And then right towards before launch, we were like, there doesn't seem to be a benefit to doing that we could figure out. So we never programmed it to be like that regional. So basically it's either it's on or it's off. So we would actually have to go in and program stuff just to make it so that we could then only launch it in certain regions. And it would just, so I think that we're going to probably just launch it when we launch it, and it'll go back open for everybody again. But I know that there is some work being done on it, and we're hoping, like I said, I'm hoping for sometime this summer. But again, it depends. Like right now, obviously, Here in the United States, the CDC said, what, on Friday or Saturday, they're like, if you're fully vaccinated and your friends are fully, or whatever, like you don't need to wear a mask around each other anymore. Some people are just like, oh, that means I get to go in any store I want without a mask on, and that's becoming issue, because maybe not everybody in the store is also vaccinated. So anyway, whatever. But yeah, so we're keeping an eye on that, and we're programming. We're changing the programming base. The database and the API are staying the same, but the main programming base is switching over to the programming library language. I'm the designer, so I don't really know the technicals, but I know that we're using something called Flutter to do the new version. So, but that's more of a kind of a front end and structural thing. So yeah. Yan Lo in Malifaux is the worst model to put together. You have to actually glue his beard on, and it always falls off. Yeah, they made a T-shirt actually. I think it was 2018 or 2019 when I was at Gen Con. 2019 was the last time I was at Gen Con, but I don't remember if I saw the shirt 2 years ago or 1 year ago, whatever. But in the Malifaux booth, they have a T-shirt that says, "I survived Yan Lo's beard." And I'm like, maybe rather than making a T-shirt about how hard it is to build that model, maybe you guys should try to figure out how to make it not so hard to build that damn model. Let's just say that. Yeah, I don't know. Personal preference. I'm 45 minutes late. How? This YouTube thing always fails me. Plus, I'm at work. Maybe that's it. Oh, no, we had a reverse daylight savings. No, I'm kidding. But good to see you, Animaster. I hear you about RPGs. My group downplay the acting big time and focus on action that are appropriate for each character type. Yeah, I definitely have always preferred in the few RPGs that I've played, and I haven't played in a long time, but in the few RPGs that I played, like when I first started getting into like, nerd games as opposed to just like regular old board games, Life, Sorry, that kind of stuff, Monopoly. 5th grade, D&D, that's where I started, and I did that for a good, but I don't know, as I've gotten older, I have a hard time with it. I don't know what it is. When does the show actually start? My show here, right now, it started about 53 minutes ago, so it starts at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you're talking about Twitch, my Monday night Twitch starts at 7 p.m. Central Time, and my Friday mornings start at 10 a.m. Central Time. Zone Readers is really unique. The Animorphs would be very tough. Yes, I agree. That's kind of the thing, is the different factions. Like, some of them are just like, I don't know how I would model that. Hello from the Philippines. Glad to catch this live again. Kit bashing some Marines for a competition. Wish me luck. Absolutely. Good luck. Let's see here. Have you ever checked out Reality's Edge? Yes, it's right here, but it's got a bunch of stuff stacked on it. But yeah, it's right over there. Yeah, I have not played that one either. I've read through the book, and it's a nice book. It's got great, print quality. The artwork's very cool. I like it. I think that partially, again, that issue is it's a little difficult to do Cyberpunk minis a little bit, especially if you're playing Cyberpunk 2077. I'm like, there's neat stuff going on here, but so what I think somebody needs to do, what I would like to see one of these Patreon 3D sculptor, 3D printer folks do, just do bits. Like every month, just do a whole section of bits. Just like, I'm going to pay you, whatever, $10 a month, and I'm going to get access to an STL of fancy swords and fancy shields and this for fantasy. And then next month, it's crazy cyberpunk extra accessories. Like, it's the stuff that I want to be able to print and then put onto the models that I'm, like, I could take a Vansar or a Necromunda dude of some sort, Vansar. Heck, you could do Escher. You could take the Escher, like the women, and give one of them like a cyber deck, and then boom, like you're done. You got yourself cyberpunk minis. It's just kind of hard to get the little cyber deck and be, So yeah, I'd love to see one of those sculptors just make bits. That would be great, because I would definitely get in on that. And then, because then you could just at any time you could just be like, I'm going to print 26 of these helmets, or I'm going to, whatever. It would just be, boots, anything. Like, you could easily, if you printed boots, it's not that hard to take a normal plastic miniature, just clip off the leg at a point, glue the boot on there, position it a little bit. There's a lot of things that you could do. I think it would be a great, and it wouldn't be crazy difficult for the sculptor. Like, you don't have to do like full-blown, like, huge concept renders and things like that. It would be relatively, almost a little bit utilitarian, but I think there'd be a lot of benefit to it. So if some of you are sculptors out there, there's your freebie for the day. Psyched getting my first vax shot tomorrow. Nice. Nice, VJ. Good to hear it. Let's see here. Have you seen Lasting Tales miniatures? Scary amount of miniatures from a Kickstarter. I haven't. No, I don't think I'm familiar with Lasting Tales. Or wait, am I? Actually, Game 4 Matt might have sent me a link. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. No, I do, because they already had one in the past, right? And it's like a skirmishy fantasy game, but they just throw just a zillion models at you. Yes, I did see that. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I'm like, And then I was like, I already have too many models. I'm good. So yeah. I've heard of Malifaux sprues with single cigarettes. Yeah, it's a little nuts. I'm new to Age of Sigmar, and I just bought starter box, and now they're going to go with 3rd edition, and I have anxiety. I never experienced change like this. Do many things change between editions? Not a lot, to be perfectly honest with you. They've already started talking a little bit on the Warhammer community website, and you should probably check out the Warhammer community website if you're interested in getting into Age of Sigmar or any other GW games, because it's a good place to find out kind of what's coming down the road. But yeah, the Warhammer community website has kind of talked a little bit about some of the changes that are coming for Age of Sigmar 3, 3rd edition, 3.0, whatever you want to call it. I don't remember what they are, because I don't really play Age of Sigmar, but I know there are going to be some changes, but it's not going to be huge. That's the thing, is it's not like it's like none of the big changes from the big companies, specifically Games Workshop, are ever big changes. Like, for years, I've wanted them to fix the activation for Warhammer 40,000. I don't like it, and since I don't like it, it should change. That's not completely true. But it keeps me from enjoying the game or playing the game, because I'm like, this activation is just old and kind of dumb. I don't dig it. Like the whole, we roll off at the beginning to see who gets to win the game. Okay, cool, it's you. Great. And then you do your first turn, destroy half my army in the first shot, and then it's my turn, at the bottom part of the first turn, and then I try to live, and then we just go back and forth until you win. And that's fun. I like, even in Age of Sigmar, like, you roll every turn to see who gets to go first. So it's not just a, foregone conclusion from the beginning, which I dig. Same with kill teams, like all that stuff. I like that, but they won't change it in 40K because they know there would be so much gnashing of teeth and rending of garments, predominantly from the competitive community. There was a lot of people who refused to play Age of Sigmar with the proper rules when they first launched it, because they're like, I don't like that because you can go twice then in a row. Well, yeah, that's part of the point. They're like, no, we're going to play it the old way. Well, whatever. But now they play it the new way, because that's the way all the tournament organizers, for the most part, make it. So they're like, we're going to follow the actual rules. So the changes won't be huge, to be perfectly honest. There might be some point tweaks here and there, and they might, this and that. But and the issue with that, in my opinion, is like, well, if the changes aren't a little bit more drastic, then why did you bother, other than you needed to sell more books? That's kind of what's going on here. There's no good reason to make 3rd edition Age of Sigmar this year, in my opinion. But they're going to do it anyway because they need to make money. And that's just part of the cycle. That's part of the deal with working with the bigs, as it were. So I hope that answer wasn't too cynical, I guess. Any plans for Gen Con this year? I'm hoping to go. I know I have housing. That's not a problem. The issue is, because of Gen Con, because of COVID, they're reducing the number of on-site people. Like, they're not going to have 70,000 people. That's not a thing. Now, I normally go as a media person, so they have said that they're also probably not going to have 100% of the media folks either available. So I will know more probably within a couple of weeks, because I want to say maybe next weekend is when tickets open up for Gen Con. So I'm hoping I can go. If not, if I can't get a press badge Because the thing is I probably can't buy a regular badge. I would just buy a regular badge if they're like, yeah, you can't get a press badge. But the trick is that unless you had a badge for 2020 that you then said, I'll carry over into 2021 since 2020 didn't happen, those people are guaranteed to get in. But if you didn't have a badge last year, which I didn't have a paid for badge last year, I had a media badge ready to go, then it doesn't, yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know. Push comes to shove, there's a company I was talking to recently that were like, well, if you want to kind of like come and work at our booth a little bit, we can get you a badge. We can't get you a place to stay. That we can't do. And I'm like, that I got nailed down. It's the actual badge part. So we'll figure something out. Hopefully. But Gen Con moved, not physically, but temporally. They're in mid-September this year, so that'll be also different and interesting, I think, to some degree, because I don't know that I've ever been in Indianapolis in September. So, hopefully it shouldn't be so crazy hot. A very important part of RPGs is finding the right group with the right balance of role-playing and dungeon crawling that suits your playstyle. That's very true. It's very true. Ever tried Turbodork paints? I picked up a few and they're pretty rad. Yeah, I used them on my my Pusgoyle Blightlord on his wings. I used them on my Tyranids for Kill Team. I did those also on Twitch. I used them on something else too. Oh, my Nighthaunts also on Twitch. I did, yeah. So I've used them a good deal. I like them. I've used them both with airbrush and brushed on. You definitely need to start promoting your podcast too. It is so good. Everyone should be listening. Well, thank you, Adrian. I appreciate it. So it's not really my podcast. It's the Game 4 podcast, and it's wherever podcasts are sold. They're not sold, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, we do it every 2 weeks. We're doing another one this coming week, and we talk about just general tabletop gaming, not miniatures. I mean, we talk about miniatures here and there, obviously, because both Matt from Game 4 and I both play miniatures, but he's also big into RPGs and also into board games, and we talk about kind of like how to enhance your... we don't just talk about Game 4 because, well, there wouldn't have been much going on over the last year. But we talk about like how to, like we recently did one about like FOMO, like, fear of missing out, and is it affecting what you buy and that kind of stuff. We've done a lot of different topics. We've done some interviews. We interviewed Lee, Gaddis Games, who was here in the chat earlier. We interviewed a store owner in Portland who also is a game designer, and we've interviewed a woman named Terry Latorco who used to work for Renegade Game Studios. She's left there recently and went and worked. Now she's working with Monty Cook Productions, Monty Cook, whatever the Monty Cook. And so yeah, we've it's cool. It's a fun thing to do. So Cyberpunk Red Skirmish game Kickstarter just finished. Yeah, I saw the Kickstarter. They did pretty well. I don't know what it is, but looking at the game, I felt almost like it was a little too... It's probably a good gateway game, but for my personal likes, it looked a little... There's way too many cards and tokens. And as soon as there's way too many cards and tokens, I'm slightly less interested in a miniatures game, because I feel like you're starting to head a little bit more into board gamey territory. And again, I definitely appreciate those, because I know that's how you get some board gamey people to come over to miniature game people, and that's fine. But for my own personal use, I generally like something that's like, more of just like a book, and then you kind of do the rest. I don't want a boxed game as much. Like, sure, there's a box game, like, Kill Team's a box game, Warcry's a box game, but really you just need the book and then a bunch of models, and then you can kind of go from there. Is it convenient to have the board and the miniatures in there? Sure. Do I need that many tokens and stuff like that? That's a design choice, and I'm not super into it, I guess. Let's say that. If person going first is always winning, then either they have an all-in build, or you're not playing with enough terrain. Sure, I don't know. I like I said, it's that part was a touch snarky, but I am really annoyed by the way that the activations work in 40K, and they just don't ever change it. Like every edition, I'm like, maybe this is the one, and it's never the one. So yeah, it is. I don't know. I would have loved, like, we played a game once at the shop where instead of using normal activation, this was like maybe in 7th when I got real surly about 40K and completely stopped it altogether. And then 8th came out, and I liked 8th quite a bit. And then 9th came out, and then I haven't played 9th, and partially because of the pandemic, and I don't really see myself doing it. I've kicked around the idea of Combat Patrol for 9th, but even then, I'm kind of like, eh. Anyway, we played a 7th edition game using the activation rules from Bolt Action, where you have a die for each of your units, and then you throw them in a bag, and your opponent does the same, throws them in the same bag, and then you just sort of wiggle the bag around, and you pull out a die. Oh, it's a blue one. That's one of yours. And then you could, unit by unit, and it was random, and it was super fun, really enjoyable. So, like, you can still do that, obviously. You and your friends can play that way, because that's why it's a tabletop game, so you can make your own rules. But if you go to the shop, and you're like, hey, you want to play that way? And they're like, no, man, I want to play, so it's a thing. Very interested in trying the new GW synthetic brushes when they drop. Yeah, I want to take a look at it. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm kind of surprised they went white. That is a little surprising to me. But yeah. Let's see here. Do you have any advice in trying to re-spark game culture at my FLGS? The 4 stores near me are open, but nobody's playing games. I love advice on finding pickup games in a post-COVID world. I mean, I think maybe one of the is the shop even allowing people to come in and play? Because some shops, depending on the region you are in, it's still not a good idea to do that. Around where I live, most of the shops, I take that back. The 2 shops here in town that I know of are both allowing people in. One is, I think, still requiring masks. I'm not sure about the other one. So yeah, that's a thing. So it might be something like that, but it's also going to be people who are just like still maybe kind of nervous about it. Maybe they don't have their vaccine yet, so they're like, I'm not going to go to the store. I think it's going to take some time to come back. It is, and I don't know how you convince people to come back, especially if you're like at the store, like, and they're not. Like, if the store has a Discord or a Facebook group or something like that, maybe you can kind of try to get some traction there to get people to come back in, but. Yeah, I think it's going to take some time. It's not going to be like a light switch where we just turn it back on and everything's cool again. It's going to take some time, which is a bummer, but there it is. I'm still here in the chat, and it was great being interviewed by you guys. All your podcasts are very informative about the subject matter. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Tokens as option reminders, good. Tokens as a necessity for play, not so good. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I like a good token sometimes, but it's when they're kind of required, or... How do I put this? If I have to buy the box set to get access to the tokens, and there's a ton of them, that is not a design rule that I like. If I maybe buy some tokens or even make some tokens or whatever, there's lots of companies out there, Litco and all these different companies that make different tokens or whatever. You can do whatever you want because I find it's useful in certain situations. Like, I love the dice that I've got on Etsy for Kill Team to show this guy is readied, this guy is charging, this guy is, whatever, this guy already shot, whatever. That's a nice little extra feature, and I dig that. But it's honestly, the fact that there were different tokens for all those was on the far end of where I was real happy with. So when I saw those dice, I'm like, these are perfect because I'm not going to have to dick around with a whole bunch of stuff. I have no problem, especially because my memory is not necessarily great, I have no problem with something that indicates this guy's already activated. This monster has already done its thing, so we don't do this thing twice, especially if you have a bunch of them. But having too many tokens, in my opinion, like, as I was playing X-Wing, like, every ship started to come out with new specialty tokens, and you were just getting more and more of those plastic, like, fishing tackle things with all the little containers in them. And you were just like, well, I'm out of little slots, so I'm going to start doubling them up over here. So this slot is now, focus tokens and also these weird ion cannon tokens or whatever, and all this junk, and it just, that sort of drives me a little bit nuts. I like tokens for bookkeeping in my games. That way I don't have to keep so much in my head. Yeah, I do too, again, like I said, but up to a point. Like, too many tokens, and especially if they're, like, almost kind of required tokens. Like, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, like, basically that's almost, like I said, it's a gateway game because it comes in a box. You kind of need to buy it in the box, so you have all that stuff, and they have expansions and stuff like that, but it's still a little bit more, I don't want to say board gamey, but the fact that it's packaged that way, like, it would be very difficult, I think, to play that game just with the book. and be like, use your own models and use your own, you could do it, but it would be, because they got cards and there's all these other little things. So yeah, I don't know. Star Breach works that way too. Yeah, with the activation. Star Breach is basically kind of using the same type of activation that Bolt Action does. And I think that's a great type of activation scheme. Axe and Axes. I love the dice bag activation system. The roll under your reaction score and 5 parsecs is great too. Yeah, I can see that too. Let's see here. I think 40k would be really improved using the bolt action system. Yes, I do too. I think it would make it a lot more challenging to keep your units in the commander's aura. Yeah, that's very true too. Absolutely. I like kill team sequencing. I do too. Like, it's weird because you roll off every turn and then you're like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to do the now I'm going to do all of my movement, which it's fine. And then you do all your movement, and then we're alternating, readied, and then not readied, and then you get into combat, and who charged and who didn't, and all that stuff. It's pretty good. I like that system quite a bit, actually, too. It's a little, I still like the concept of just completely, like, I think it would maybe slow things down a little bit, maybe, with the number of units you could potentially have if it was a constant, like, this guy gets to go, this guy gets to go, and where, as opposed to like rolling off at the beginning of the turn, if it was like every single individual with the dice bag sort of situation, that might be a little bit harder in those situations, or not harder, but at least slow things down a touch. I've come to really dislike the random activation because, in my experience, it favors defensive play and makes it hard to plan anything. It becomes a game of reaction. I think life is a kind of a game of reaction. You know what I mean? Like, that's like war in general is kind of a game of reaction. Like, they always say that, every battle plan fails when it meets the enemy or something like that. And, so again, and we talked about this recently on the Game 4 podcast, not to keep hitting on that, but we talked about randomness in games. I like randomness in games because it allows me to react more as opposed to be more like chess, where you're like, okay, well, 6 turns out, I've got you checkmate, or whatever. And if there was anything even vaguely like that in 40k, which obviously there's not, because there's dice rolling and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I like the randomness because it makes the game interesting. But again, I'm not playing for competitive play. I guess that's probably the difference. Have you ever played Bushido? I have not. I've seen the models. The models are, well, the painted ones that I saw at Gen Con several years ago were gorgeous, but sometimes that can be the painter. Sometimes the models might not be so great, but the painter can make them great. But I have a suspicion that they're pretty good models, just because, sometimes it's also like no matter how good the painter is, they can't make the model look good because the model can be jank. But yeah, definitely. I have seen some of those models, and they're pretty cool. How do you like your old-fashioned, sweet or sour? Cherries or olives? Generally cherries. Well, or oranges. Well, orange slice is good too. Let's see here. Good morning, Uncle Adam. Have you ever played the Mansions of Madness miniatures board game from Fantasy Flights based on the world of H.P. Lovecraft? No, I haven't. I've heard of Mansions of Madness. I thought it was more of a card game, but I could be wrong. I've played, and again, I don't see this as being a miniatures game particularly, but I've played Betrayal at House on the Hill, too. I mean, you have like a little person, and you're moving from room to room, but it's basically not. It's more of a board game. But I have not played Mansions of Madness, no. I love Kill Team, but I cannot imagine 40K style of just everything together over 3 hours. Much too slow. Well, I mean, that's a problem with army games in general, I think, in my opinion. I really like Star Wars Legion's activations, where you get some randomness, but your command card can help you set up moves. Yes, the Star Wars Legion command, yeah, that's very cool. I really like the almost bidding style at the beginning of the turn, where you're like, I'm going to use this, because then you're like, I know I'm more likely to be able to go first because I'm using this card, this command card, but it also limits me a little bit in that it says that I can only do this and this and that. Yeah, I think that the activation scheme for Star Wars Legion, I think, is really interesting, and that's why one of the reasons why I like that game too. I like the kill team has some alternating activation, but it's annoying that it's mixed in with phase-based turns. I prefer Warcry's system, which is more purely alternating activations. Yeah, I generally like that too. I'd prefer generally like completely alternating, moving this guy, and then we figure something out, and then that guy's moving and whatever. Yeah, that's my preference as well. Initiative roll in 40k is kind of a random activation, only by army instead of by unit. Well, yeah, but you only do it once at the beginning of the game, and then you're, so there's that. I think my issue with random activation is not accounting for individual initiative. That was one of the things I sort of liked a little bit about Star Wars X-Wing, was that the initiative order was completely based off of, like, it was pilot skill, wasn't it? I believe it was pilot skill. And so if you had a lower pilot skill, you had to go first, versus people who had higher skills would go, because then that would allow them to kind of like react. It made a ton of sense. Like, the people who are, their pilot skills lousy, they're going to be like, and just try to fly and not die. Whereas the pilot who's like much better at piloting gets to go at the end after everybody else has moved and then put themselves into position, right? And then after the movement phase, immediately the shooting phase starts. And if I remember correctly, at least in first edition, I never played second edition X-Wing, then the people who get to shoot first are the people with the highest pilot skill. So yeah, that was a super smart system in my opinion, and I like that concept quite a bit. I'd like to see more of that in miniatures, honestly. I'm the kind of guy who loves the swinginess of the D20. Every fight in Rangers of Shadow Deep is a gamble. Yeah, I like swinginess too. I really do. Ever played Lobotomy? I have not. No, never heard of it. 40k, Kill Team, Age of Sigmar, Warcry, all would benefit from alternating activations like the video game Worms. I haven't played Worms in forever. Have you given Mythos a try? That's got a Lovecraft vibe, right? I've got some of the stuff, actually. And I was actually just talking about it on Friday on my Twitch stream. There's a button right there I can hit, which is at Mondays at 7 p.m. Central and Fridays at 10 a.m. Central. So I'll be streaming tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central here on Twitch. Or not here on Twitch. I'm not on Twitch currently. You know what I'm saying. Twitch TV, twitch.tv/tabletop minions. Anyway, yeah, I will be soon-ish working on Hidden Ones from Mythos, which is one of the factions. I've got the box. It's got like, there's like a weird spooky fisherman dude. There's like a weird spooky lady who's got some tentacles. There's another spooky lady who's got some tentacles. There's a giant crab whose name is Click Clack or something like that. And some sort of like angler fish with legs, which is spooky as well. So yeah, those are all resin models, but I'm looking forward to painting them. I got to build them obviously first, and I'm looking forward to that. So definitely. I listened to the Game4 podcast, Tech in the Hobby. Your discussion on machine deep learning is scary as heck. Not just for gaming, but for real life jobs. Automation is scary. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It can be. Judge Dredd game looks awesome. I have seen it, not played. I've seen like the box at, where was I? I think it was last time that I was at the Nova Open, which would have been 2019, late 2019. Well, not late. September, I guess, 2019. I remember seeing there was a booth there. I don't know if it was Warlord's booth or if it was just a retailer that had a bunch of Warlord stuff there. But yeah, there was. I remember seeing the box, and I've always enjoyed Judge Dredd. You know, like 2000 AD and that kind of stuff and everything. I did not like the movie particularly with Sylvester Stallone, but the movie with what's his name there? No, I can't think of his name. He played Bones on the new Star Trek. He was in a bunch of different things that I like quite a bit. He's in The Boys now. Anyway, his Dredd, that's a spectacular movie. But yeah. Lower skill moves first, higher skill shoots first. Yep. And it's still that way in 2.0. Okay, cool. As someone slightly on the ADHD scale, I struggle to concentrate for a whole turn of 40k. I think people tend to play too many points. Yeah, there's something to be said for that, and I know a lot of people have been like, I've heard a lot of people recently being like, oh, I until they come up with a new kill team, or I don't like kill team, I'm going to play Combat Patrol instead. And Combat Patrol is just basically 500 point 40k with I don't even know if there's anything much in the way of actual tweaks to the normal rules. The issue is I don't want to move squads around anymore. I like having each little dude or dudette, whatever, or robot or alien. I like making them all do separate things. And that's what I enjoy about the game. I don't want to have to be like, these 7 people go this way. You know what I mean? That's just a personal preference. Carl Urban. I knew it was like on the tip of my brain. But yeah. If you can watch Dredd, the movie, instead of the Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone, sweet. I know that there was a Judge Dredd Judge Dredd miniatures game made by Mongoose Publishing back sometime in the 2000s. But I think this new one I think it's Warlord, right? That one's supposed to be pretty cool, but I have not really looked. I should look and see if I could find a bat wrap of it someplace. Let's see here. 40k work all right on a much smaller scale. Hero, a couple of infantry squads, and a tank. Beyond that, it just becomes unwieldy. Well, that's kind of the whole idea of combat patrol. And they've been pushing combat patrol a lot. If you look at any of the... I don't know a codex anywhere near me here. But if you look at all the new codexes, very frequently at least, it seems like they will, when they start talking about army building, the first thing they lead off with is like a big 2-page spread kind of pushing the concept of combat patrol, because it is just another entrance vector. When you come to a person and say, hey, you want to play 40k, that's really cool. You're going to need 2,000 points of models that you're going to drive people away. But when you're like, you only need a little bit of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at like a combat patrol for Primaris, you can make a combat patrol for Primaris out of the Indominus box, and it's like 13 models. That's not particularly expensive if people are buying them, like, you know, on eBay, let's say, from the Indominus box. If you buy the entire Indominus box, that's not cheap. But if you're just like go onto eBay and, you know, kind of cherry pick the Primaris stuff you want, not that big of a deal. Also, not that much stuff to paint and build either. So there's that. But when you tell somebody, yeah, well, this army is, you know, 2,000 points, and it's then that's a red flag for some folks, or it's a too steep of a hill to climb. So War Cry, Kill Team are both helping to try to get people into the respective factions or whatever genres. You know, you got your Age of Sigmar versus your 40k, but even within 40k now, they're also like, well, we're going to make a simpler version of, not simpler, but we're going to make a fewer, a combat patrol, which, like I said, I think is 500 points, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Bolt action is the best rule set, in my opinion, says Kelly. Which other ones do you love? Oh, there's a bunch. GW did a Dread game in the 80s. No kidding. That's interesting. I did not know that. Moving to Hong Kong tomorrow from Shanghai. Going to look up new communities there. Nice. Good to hear. Moderator Matt says it's Carl Franz. Nice. I think it was Carl Franz. Or is it Franz? Hey, 52 Miniatures. How you doing? I saw the Stargrave video that you did about Stargrave and all that kind of stuff, and it was cool. And thanks for the shout out. I appreciate it. I've been kind of interested in getting the Death Guard Combat Patrol box. That's right, too. They've changed all the start collecting boxes to combat patrols. That's another of them, like, kind of pushing the combat patrol idea, which is great. You know, it makes sense. But yeah, definitely. Let's see here. What else have we got here? Dread fan. I always knew Uncle Adam was a scholar and a gentleman. Yeah. Oh, I love that movie. It was great. Super great. Yeah, like I said, I was a fan of Judge Dredd before the Sylvester Stallone movie. The one thing I think that they did right in the Sylvester Stallone movie, to some degree, was and I can't think of the name of it, I always get it wrong, but the motorcycle. Like, the motorcycle looked right. Like, it's because in the comics, the front tire on that motorcycle was always like 3 feet wide. It's just massive, you know. Like, how do you even make it turn? But they did. In Dread, the motorcycle is a little less spectacular. It's still pretty cool, but they've kind of dialed everything back a little bit to make things look a little bit less cartoony and a little bit more realistic, which I dig. So I'm fine with it. But I did remember, watching the original movie and just being like, ugh. But then they got to the motorcycle, and I'm like, oh, that's actually surprisingly good, you know. So yeah. I really like the Crusade rules. I started with a Drakari kill team and just fell in love with the faction. Then I got to start collecting boxes and I had fun, so I built an army. See, that's the plan. That's what they want you to do, which is fine. Nothing wrong with it. Like I said, it used to be way more difficult because there was basically, you went from 0 to 60. Like, there was no ramp, you know? You just basically had to jump in with both feet and both arms and your head and in your entire wallet. And now you can kind of ease into it a little bit more, which is a smart move on their part. Thank you for putting Stargrave on the radar. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I like it. I was just talking earlier about how I'm working on a warband for it, my first crew, and just kind of have this head canon because I'm going to have my captain's going to be a veteran. So my idea is that he's post-military or was in the military before the Great Fall and everything all went to hell. And then my first mate is going to be a rogue, and then I've got, what else have I got? So captain is a veteran, first mate's a rogue, and then my only specialist is going to be a commando, which is going to be heavy armor. And then I've got 2 sentries, I've got a medic, I've got a hacker, and then I have a trooper, which I'm actually going to make into a robot, and then 2 recruits. And as of yesterday, starting to use the plastic kits from North Star, I've built the 2 recruits and the medic. So I kind of started on the light armor end, and I'll keep going from there. And I'm not going to do all of the models, I don't think, out of those plastics. Like I said, the robot I'm probably going to use from Star Wars Legion. But I'm going to try, the captain might be special. He might not just be, but the general henchmen, if this was Frostgrave, are going to be probably relatively simplistic. Lawmaster is the bike. Yep, there's Lawmaster, and is it the Peacekeeper is the gun? I always get them too confused. Lawgiver is the gun. Yep. Peacekeeper was an actual gun in real life back in the Old West, now that I can think of it. Those GW Judge Dredd models look really cool. Yeah. The Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie is closer to the comics. It's a little bit more over the top, and I get that, but there's actually some interesting little nods to the comics in the Dredd movie from 2012 or whenever that was. Somebody got pushed off of the balconies in Peach Trees, I think it was, that big mega block or whatever. And there were scenes in the comic where there were these people who were massively, hugely obese, just huge, and they would have these little unicycle carts to hold up their tummies that they would roll in front of them as they walked around. And if you look, there's a scene where basically one of those people got pushed evidently or fell off of a balcony, and there's the cops there and stuff to check it out or whatever, and you can actually see the little unicycle gut cart kind of off to the side, when they landed and stuff, and it skittered away or whatever, and that kind of stuff. So there's little nods here and there to the goofiness and silliness to some degree of the comics, even in that movie, which I enjoy. Nice list. I'm stuck making orc pirates for random encounters. Nice. That's a good idea. Kill Team would have too many spoilers for the relevant armies to bring it out before. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake they've made with Kill Team, honestly, was Pariah Nexus. Here's the deal. If they sold that book separately, I would have no problem with Pariah Nexus. They wouldn't sell as many, which is obviously, is what it is. But if they just sold that book separately so you could still at least get the rules for the Necrons and the Space Marines, great. But since the only way to get that rule book is either to buy it on eBay from someone who just wanted the models, who probably plays 40K and doesn't really need the stuff for Kill Team, or buy the entire box, which just about every store I know of is still sitting on a whole bunch of them because they didn't sell all that well, at least in stores. And again, I'm gonna make this point again for folks. Stuff sells out on the GW website all the time. Cursed City, boom, sold out. There's a whole bunch of weird stuff that's going on there that we don't know yet, and that's not. I already had a show about that. My point is that you can go and look at your local stores, and very frequently they will have the stuff that's sold out on Games Workshop's website. Right now, I know at least 1, if not 2, local stores in my town currently have Cursed City in stock. But if you listen to the the wailing and the gnashing of teeth on the internet, it's completely sold out, and they only made 12 of them, and they gave them all to YouTubers and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But you can, and in your local area, it may not be the case. But maybe if you call to the game store in the next town over or whatever, or you might not have a game store anywhere near you. That's fine. I understand that people live in those areas as well. This is the case, but they're out there. They're just very frequently at the actual independent stockists. I'm not even talking about Warhammer stores. I'm talking about like your normal local game store that sells GW stuff. They went heavy on it. Now, they were not allowed to go as heavy as they probably would have liked. From what I've heard, potentially most stores were allocated to 8 copies, meaning they could order 8 and that was it. They couldn't order more than that. Whereas I think the allocation for Indominus was like 32 copies or something like that. So GW went into it knowing there was going to be an issue when the time came to distribute, but we don't know why and whatever. But all that being said, when you're like, oh, I can't get it, it's not on the website anymore, like let's say Pariah Nexus, well, I bet you there's some shops that are sitting on it too. So there's that kind of thing. Working on Mercenaries now, and all the Stargrave parts are numbered except the torso. Not sure why. I think it's because they want to... I was looking at this too, you're right. The arms are numbered to be like matched. So if you use arm 5 for the left arm and arm 5 for the right arm, they should sort of match, especially when it's like a rifle and a hand that's supposed to be holding the rifle. But you could put those 2 arms on any of the torsos because they're very variable. But the torsos are all the same width. So those numbers that are on the arms are just to help you match this arm to that arm, but it doesn't matter which torso you put it on because the torsos are all the same width, and so it's all comes out in the wash. Do you have the Warlord Judge Dredd? The scopes are very nice. Take a page out of the comic book. The Lawmaker bike looks pretty awesome. I don't have the Warlord game from Judge Dredd, but like I said, I've seen it at conventions, but I have not played it. Let's see here. Good evening from the Philippines. Incredibly hot day today at 105 F. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of F. I'm in no mood to do anything without my air conditioning on full blast. Yeah, I can understand that. The 80s Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren was the only good one of the bunch. Oh, now we're getting into some hot takes. I followed your advice, Uncle Adam, and hence I now have a copy of Cursed City on my pile of shame. It was such a weird thing, asking my FLGS and them actually having the last copy. See, there you go. There you go. Adeptus Latrina says, there's still copies of Pariah Nexus and Cursed City still sitting at my FLGS. Yeah. I mean, and again, it's not everywhere. Like, I got a friend who lives in the northwest of L.A., and he called around to a bunch of stores, and he was like, yeah, I couldn't find it anywhere. So then he texted me, and he was like, do you know of anybody who's got it? And I'm like, well, yeah, my friend Kevin just down the street. I can drive down there to his shop and buy one, and then I bought it and shipped it to him. And so, yeah, that worked out. But yeah, there's definitely stuff out there. Let's see here. You'd think with as few game shops as there are here in Las Vegas, they would have sold out by now. See, I didn't realize there was that few in Vegas. I talked to, one year when I was at LVO, I talked to the manager of the, I don't know if it's the only GW store in Vegas, but it was one of them. Super nice dude. And yeah, but I guess I haven't explored, like the few times that I've gone to Vegas, basically for LVO, well, sometimes I literally stay in the building the entire time. Like it's a big building, don't get me wrong, because it's the Bally attached to the Paris. And so, like, there's a lot of, but the first time that I went, we did go bar hopping outside of the place because there was, Shapeways, the 3D printer, or not 3D, the 3D printing people who you pay them to print your stuff. They had like a party, and it was at a different bar, and so we kind of did it was fun. But the other 2 years I think that I went there, we basically just stayed in the building the whole time, because it's January, so it's not like it's hot or anything like that, particularly in Vegas, but it's just, there's no reason necessarily to go anywhere if you don't have to. But I'm not a big sightseer, I guess, so I'm not going to go down to Fulton Street, is that what it's called? The Strip? I don't know, whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of where that's at. Judge Dredd game is awesome, but as a fan of the comic, I preferred Strontium Dog. Minis are awesome and a blast to paint. Now, they made a game of that too, didn't they? Is that still also Warlord? Is that also Warlord, the Strontium Dog thing? Going to drive down to Lake Geneva later to pick up a Korn versus Stormcast First Edition starter box that they have there. Nice. Patty's Parlor Game says, I'm actually from Vegas. Little Shop of Magic was my store. They have a booth usually at LVO. Now, that name rings a bell. Yeah, they have a booth there. Vegas is easily one of the realms of chaos. You know, it could be. It was very chaotic that first year when I went, and it was, yeah, like I said, we went bar hopping. And then, like, by the end of the night, the people that were still, like, part of the group, we all ended up at this bar that sold, I think, like $2 Coronas. You know what I mean? Like, which is pretty cheap. It's cheaper than you can get water there in in Vegas, and but yet you had to be like metal detector wanded to get in there, and we were like, well, but $2 Coronas though. So yeah, that was an interesting night. That was one of those go to bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning kind of nights, and then yeah. But yeah, let's see here. Vegas being a realm of chaos is why I left. Yeah, I can understand that too. Vegas is like the planet Dune. It will desiccate you in moments if you are unprepared. Yeah. Well, that was the thing too, is that like the last couple of years I've been there, especially in that particular building at the Bally/Paris, like if you want to buy a bottle of water, it's like $5, $6, $7. But if you want a 32-ounce can, or is it a 24-ounce can? 24 or 32-ounce can of Miller High Life, that's like $2.45. So you're like, well, I guess we're just drinking beer now. We're not going to drink water because, yeah, you know. So yeah, that's it was just, yeah, it was weird. You like literally, I would just have like an entire case full of these things, and then you like that, but like put a 20-ounce bottle of like Aquafina or whatever was like $5, $6, $7. So yeah. When I moved here, Little Shop of Magic never came up when I searched for for game shops. See, and that's one of the big benefits to the Game 4 app once we get it unhibernated again, was that it was a great resource for being able to, like, I had people, once we launched it and everything, people would be like, I travel to this city for work every 3 months, and I used your app and learned that there are 3 game stores here in town that I never knew were there. Because when you go to Google and type in game store, and then the name of the city, let's say, you're going to get GameStop. You're going to get all kinds of weird junk and, used video game stores and stuff like that. Whereas the database that we had, which when we hibernated it back in mid-July, was around 6,800 plus tabletop gaming stores worldwide. It was probably the biggest database for game stores probably on the planet. Now, it'll be interesting to see how many of them have survived COVID and all that kind of stuff and everything. But yeah, that's going to be the plan, is to kind of get that fired back up again. So it'll be very cool. Does anyone make 10mm or 15mm skirmish games? I think that I've heard of 15mm skirmish games. There are plenty of games out there that are designed to also be played either as 28mm or 15mm. Generally what happens is then you can just convert inches to centimeters. So if they're like, oh, well, this guy's can shoot his bow 15 inches, well, then you say now he can shoot his bow. If you're using the 15mm scale, then he can shoot his bow 15 centimeters. So it's the conversion that way. I think Star Breach is designed to do that, or they at least mention it in there. I know games like Song of Blades and Heroes, which is not sci-fi, but they also have other sci-fi stuff within that same range from Song of Blades and Heroes. The folks at Ganesha Games, like Flying Lead is one. They've got a couple different ones, but nonetheless, all that stuff is definitely designed to be used in either 15 or 28. Good day from South Ontario, getting in late. Not a problem, John Ashley Smith. Hope you're doing well. Rusty Scabbard in Lexington, Kentucky comes up with the Google, as well as listings for tobacconists. Crazy databases. Yeah, that's... The Warriors miniature game would be a fun one to play at the LGS. Glass bottle and sing-song activation system. There you go. Alternative Armies has multiple 15mm skirmish games, and they're dirt cheap dice or nice models. I've heard of Alternative Armies, yeah. Let's see here. Post pollen. Yeah, no, it's my allergies are rough today. So yeah, like I said, I'm trying to think for my next. Like I'm already thinking ahead to building a second Stargrave warband, and based off of the. And I'm also working on Zona Alpha as well because I've got my cultists finished. They're painted and ready to go. I am going to also do like relatively kind of like private military contractor type folks, and then I'm trying to think what my third one is. But the private military contractor folks are like the parts are. I've got the parts all. I just haven't built them yet. But I'm basically kind of like writing up a list. That's how I generally work with skirmish games and stuff. Is I start by I'm going to write a list. And then during that time, like I said, I'm kind of theory crafting. I'm kind of headcanon, like thinking about like, okay, well, this is the leader and this is that. And I'm, and this is a personal thing. I'm never thinking like, what's the most efficient build? I am thinking about like, well, maybe it would be good to have a long range shooter here as well, but if it doesn't make sense, like there's plenty of games where they're kind of broken and you can just be like, everybody's a sniper. Like, well, that's weird. Why is everybody on this team a sniper? Is it a team of 5 snipers? That's strange. It's not normally what would happen generally, And sure, it may win games or whatever, but, like Legion has that kind of meta going on. Star Wars Legion, like there's a maximum number of scouts you can take, and so pretty much, and I think it's 3, and most of the lists that you see that win the tournaments, they're taking 3 scouts, so they got 3 snipers. Why you'd have 3 snipers in a group like that, whatever. I'll take 1. That's my 800-point list for basically stormtroopers and all that, the Empire. My Empire list is got 1 sniper in it because it makes more sense to me. So anyway, but yeah, with this, my next plan I think is to, and you start with the captain, which is another thing I really like about a game like this, is that you generally, and this is the same with Frostgrave. It's the same to some degree with Zona Alpha. You always have to have a leader, so I like to generally start with the leader and then kind of, iterate from there. But I see myself doing probably... Like, I don't see myself doing a biomorph. I could see myself doing a cyborg captain, maybe, and then having a lot more robots or something like that in there. But you've got a cyborg, but you've also got a robotics expert. So there's maybe a potential, if I can find really cool robot models, I could just go with, like, the captain's a robotics expert, the first mate is something, maybe... I don't know, a techer, that would make some sense. Or maybe the first mate's a veteran, and then like a bunch of the rest of the crew, maybe half of the crew is robots, and that would make some sense too. And then the other thing that's really cool too is that you go through and you build the skills, and that's, when you're building, again, and it feels a little role-playing game-ish to me, but when you're starting out with one of these, let's say you take the Mystic. So stat modifications, you get +2 to your will, +1 to health, and then you get to choose one of the following, either +1 to move, +1 to fight, or +1 to shoot. So that's over the base stat human. These are the extra things that a mystic leader gets. And then you also have core powers, which are control animal, dark energy, heal, life leech, mystic trance, puppet master, suggestion, and void blade. And they explain what all of them are in the book. Well, you can't take all of those, but you have to choose, I think it's 3 or 4 of those core ones, and then you choose, depending on how many you chose, and you either choose 3 or 2 of the rest of the list of all of the different. So it's like a flavor thing. If you decide to go techer, you have these main things you have to take, and then you have other things you can kind of take. And then that way you don't take a techer who is like all mystic powers, which would be weird. But a techer could have a mystic power, or maybe even a couple, And so, but you don't have to go through all of that for everybody. It's just the captain and the first mate, and then everybody else is just kind of a hench person. But they call them just crew. And so it's cool. I like that system to it a lot. I think it's really neat. Let's see here. If you come for the next LVO, I'll buy you a beer. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. As far as my travel for a while, I don't know if I'm going to do a lot of plane flying. I mean, I'm not going to do any this year, I don't think. First of all, the only other convention I would fly to, so LVO didn't happen, obviously, in 2020. Or 2021. What the hell year is it? Yeah, 2021. So it didn't happen in 2021. Nova, which is out in DC, the Nova Open, they canceled that, so I'm not going to that. I drive to Adepticon. Well, Adepticon didn't happen this year either. And Gen Con we drive to because it's like 6.5 hours and stuff, so it's not too bad. So yeah, I don't see myself flying anywhere this year. So the question then becomes, do I go to LVO 2022? I don't know. Not only is there just considerations with like, health and safety as far as that's concerned. I don't know. Like 2019, I flew a lot, and I don't know if that's the smart play. I don't know. Because I'm thinking about like finances a little bit. I'm thinking about just like, all of the extra carbon footprint. There's a lot of different options. So I don't know. I might try to just dial back a bit on flight and maybe only do a couple in a year. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, trying to figure that out. But definitely like Adepticon for me, it's so short of a distance. It's like less than 3 hours to get there. So I'm definitely a big fan of that. Gen Con, some other little local conventions and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, again, maybe things will get a lot better quicker and I'll feel better about it and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we will see. In case you're wondering, we will see. Thinking of getting into a non-kill team skirmish game. I've got 30 years of 40k minis. What would you recommend? I mean, I like if you're concerned about matching style to game, you would probably want to take a look at something like either Stargrave or where did I put it? Star Breach, which I'm trying to pick up. This pile is a little unwieldy. So Star Breach is a game. You can go to starbreach.com, I believe, and you can actually download the rules PDF for free. It doesn't have any of the artwork, and I think it's missing some other... It's not missing any core rules, but it's maybe missing some of the... I don't know, there's something fancy that's not quite in the free game, but you can definitely check it out and see if it's up to what you're looking for. So that's very cool. And the other thing that's cool about Star Breach is, like, in the back, when you get into the different types of... factions, you can, like, they'll have these factions, like this one's called the Inquisition, which is pretty much on the nose, so you can use Inquisition type models from Games Workshop. They have the Hive Cult, which is basically Gene Stealer cults. They have like a lot of the 40k tropes are already in here, so if you've already got models for 40k, you can look in here and go, oh yeah, those are basically supposed to be Tau. They don't call them Tau because they don't want to get sued, but they're basically Tau. Now there's also basically also like Stormtroopers, there's also Jedi, there's also random stuff like space pirates and, nomads and things. So there's a lot of different factions available to play with this game, and it's a cool setup. So that's something to look at, especially if you've already got models like that. Another great game for that kind of thing is Planet 28. Planet 28 is much smaller scale. You're generally 3 to 4 models per side. So that's also kind of an interesting benefit. And you can get that for pretty inexpensive on wargamevault.com. So yeah, definitely take a look into that as well. Dragonfall's a local one. Definitely going to be going to that. Let's see here. VinnyCon 2022. I've been to Columbus for Origins. I'm not going to Origins this year, I don't think. But that being said, that's a nearly 10-hour drive for me. And and Vince is like, yeah, 10 hours. I can do 10 hours standing on my head. He loves to drive. I hate to drive. So I don't know that I could, like, for me, Indianapolis, 6.5 hours is on my far end. I'm like, I don't want to drive much longer than that. I would be more likely to fly. If you watched Scott and John, Miniac and Ninjon, on their podcast, they talked about how they went to Vince Venturella's place with Sam, and they had a thing back in February. I think it was in February or March, one of the two. Anyway, they both said, yeah, if when we go back again, we're gonna fly, because that's a real, and they're in Minneapolis, which is 4.5 hours for me. So basically, they had to drive 4.5 hours to pick up Sam, kind of right near me, and then drive another 9+ hours. That's a really long drive. So yeah, that's We will see. I was talking a little bit with Vince, and he was talking about how he wants to now. Once Sam gets all vaccinated, because Vince is all vaccinated, I'm all vaccinated. He'd like to come drive back up here and hang out with me and Sam some soon, which I'm looking forward to because I'm just looking forward to seeing Sam. We have not been able to hang out much at all because of this. One Page Rules also has a lot of this stuff. Yeah, One Page Rules is also a good place to check out for that kind of thing, especially if you've already got a bunch of 40K models and you just want to use them for something else. One Page Rules on the internet. Let's see here. I like the gameplay for Star Breach, but I'm not as much of a fun on the factions and list building. Yeah, I mean, I like the factions fine. I will be honest with you, the factions that I've built stuff for Star Breach have been the weird rando stuff, like not... Like I did one that was basically kind of like the more space pirates and another one that was the nomads. Like I haven't done any of the ones that are like, oh yeah, those are Jedi, or oh yeah, those are, AdMech. So yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Just want to say thank you for the videos. They always inspire me to pick up a model nearby and paint. Well, absolutely, Joseph. I hope it works. I'm glad it helps, is what I'm saying. I've been completely out of the loop for the past 6 months. What are some of the latest highlights of changes to GW? Oh, there's so many. Like, they come out with stuff. I was going to say they come up with new stuff every week, but they did actually take a break at the end of April because they were kind of behind. So there's been a lot of stuff going on there. I would tell you to go to warhammer-community.com or just type in Warhammer Community into Google. You'll find it, and there will be so much news for you to look at there. Just got vaccinated yesterday too. A bit under the weather due to that. Trying hard to finish my rubrics. Hey, moderator Matt, how are you? Are you feeling better? Because I know that you just got your second shot and you were not feeling well. I hope you're doing better. But yeah, and I hope everyone's doing better. But definitely, yeah. Woke up and rolled up the next Stargrave scenario. Nice. Do you know of any Tom Clancy Splinter Cell or Ghost Recon type minis? I mean, they're probably out there. I mean, I was going to say you could take a look at... I've bought military-style minis, kind of, a little bit, that you can sort of tweak a little bit if you want to make them a little bit more like Splinter Cell and stuff like that. I would check a website called Anvil Industry. They're based out of the UK, and they make really nice resin, very modular... soldier type minis and stuff like that. I'll be using them. I already used some of their cultists because they don't have just like military type stuff. They also have all kinds of other crazy junk. And so yeah, I bought some cultists from them as well that I'm using for Zona Alpha, and those guys are done. But yeah, I would check them. They've got some really great, like I said, like very almost modular, like you just buy some heads, you buy some torsos, you buy some arms, you buy some guns to attach to the arms, and they go together really nicely. I'm really super surprised by that. Moderator Matt says I'm better today. Good to hear it. Good to hear it. Yeah, I found that when I had that second shot and everything, and I like the next day I felt like really just muscle ache everywhere, and then all of a sudden it just went like just disappeared. I was just all of a sudden I was like I think I was sitting on the couch. I was just like watching TV or something or whatever, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I feel better. So it went away pretty quickly, at least for me, which is good. Mythic Games is launching a Rainbow Six Kickstarter soon. Huh, that'll be interesting. Starbreach hardcover was Kickstarter, not currently available. That's true, yes. So this hardcover book that I was showing you was part of the Kickstarter, but otherwise they sell... So you can get the download for free from their website. You can get the slightly nicer PDF for maybe $10, I think, also from their website or from Wargame Vault. And I think they also sell a soft cover of this, but the hardcover was I happened to get on the Kickstarter for it. So yeah. Nathan says Anvil makes really nice stuff. I think so too. I really like their stuff. Spectre Miniatures is a full line of modern wargaming miniatures in 28mm. Interesting. Eureka. Yeah, I bought some Eureka models. They are, I mean, they're metal and they're one piece for the most part. There's a couple that are a couple pieces, but not too bad. The sculpts are okay. I'm working on a Zona Alpha group with them, and they're all in like basically some sort of mop gear, basically like the the stuff that protects them from nuclear, biological, chemical, yada yada. Anyway, it's and the models they're not crisp, but they're pretty good. They're fine. So yeah, but some of them, honestly, the barrels on some of the guns are kind of bendy, so you have to be very careful while bending them back into true, because if you bend them too fast, sometimes they will bust off. So you have to watch out, because just white metal these days, the metal that is used in miniatures, is got a lot more pewter in it than it used to, because they don't want to have lead in it, obviously, because it's bad. But because of that, it can be a little bit more brittle, so you have to kind of bend slowly and carefully, because if you bend quickly, you can bust stuff off. Let's see here. Got my second shot last month. Next Saturday, my first game in a year. Small meetup with a group of vaccinated 40k players. Nice. There was just some... Did I see results of some 40k tournament someplace? So, it's stuff's coming back. Spectre Ops seems like an awesome game. The tabletop CP bat reps really sell it. Interesting. I think I've heard of that, but I could... Maybe not. Do you know of any good sites for sci-fi bits for kit bashing spaceships? Like I said earlier in the show, I think that this is an area where a lot of those 3D sculptor folks that are on Patreon and stuff could really make a killing, and they could just sell, like, you do a Patreon and just make bits for miniatures, for vehicles, for terrain, all kinds of stuff like that. That would be, as I think I said before, dope. But I don't really know any great sites for that kind of stuff directly. Like for buildings and stuff like that, the best place to get like kind of add-on bits, it is twofold. TT Combat is a great place to get that stuff. I've found a lot of really cool vents and all kinds of neat things to make just help to embellish your terrain builds. And then the other one is Elric Hobbies. I've found they've got just stuff that you wouldn't think of, but venting for the HVAC system on your building. Well, yeah, your building should probably have venting for, stuff, and it makes it look more kind of realish. You know what I mean? Like when you just build a ruined foam core corner like you see on every 40k table, and you just cut some holes in it for windows and paint it gray, that's fine. But if you have some electrical junction boxes that were on the outside of the building, I mean, take a look at any building in the city you live, and there's all kinds of weird crap all over the outside, like conduits and junction boxes and pipes and vents and all kinds of junk. And that's what makes the terrain buildings look, I think, a little bit more, I don't know, complete, realistic. I don't know. It's hard to say. Mission-oriented protective posture, yes, the MOP stuff, is now JLIST, or JLIST, Joint Lightweight Integrated Suit Technology. That's a lot of acronyms. Technically, they're abbreviations. MOP is an acronym, unless JLIST is a abbreviation. The difference, and I did not know this until relatively recently, an acronym turns into a word that you can say, like scuba. But when you are talking about the CIA, that's not an acronym, that's an abbreviation, because you don't say CIA, you say CIA, FBI. You don't say FBI, you say FBI. But when you say scuba or MOP, those are words that you can just say. So that's the difference. There's your English lesson for the day. Painting some U.S. Airborne for bolt action with a view to playing my first game in 18 months in June. Nice. You can use normal D6s, but both sets need to be the same size shape. That's the general case with not just Star Breach, but also with all those, bolt action, Conflict 47. The trick is you do want the dice to be roughly the same size and shape. So if I put my dice in the bag for there, and they're normal 16 millimeter dice, and then you put your dice in the bag and then those tiny little 5 millimeter dice, that's cheating. That's not, because then obviously when you reach into the bag, you just try to find the small dice. I'm like, oh look, I get to activate again. So it's a good idea to try to have dice that are at least the same size and shape. And 16 millimeter is a standard. Do I have a D6 floating around here somewhere? I got a bunch of D12s. No, I don't have a D6. But yeah, they're 16 millimeter seems to be the standard D6 size. But so take a look at that. But if you do buy the Star Breach dice set, they are nice dice, and it does help support the folks over at Slow Death Games, which is very cool. Let's see here. Matthew Sears says, Adam is my uncle. That is not true. We are not related. You don't say Phoebe? No, I don't. I bought the soft cover and 2 sets of the order dice. Nice. Let's see here. Talos Tactical Light Operator Suit. Powered exoskeleton and weapons frame. Is that a real thing, or is that just like a sci-fi thing? Sounds kind of cool. Hey, Troutman, how you doing? Glad to catch the end of the stream. Well, absolutely. Oh, gosh, it is the end of the stream, isn't it? It's 11. All right, so I want to thank people for coming by today, and I'm going to be hopefully posting some pictures soon on probably Instagram and places like that of some of the Starbreach stuff that I'm working on, and stuff that I'm working on also for Zona Alpha and that kind of stuff there. So that'll be a lot of fun. That book is upside down. But yeah, so it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to doing, working on these parts, and it's going to be cool, I think, as well to. Because I'm not a competitive player, I like to spend a little bit more time on getting that stuff ready to go and everything. And we've had a lot of time to do it, honestly, the last 14 months or whatever. So hopefully you've had some time to get some warbands, crews, groups, squads, whatever, ready for the games of your choice. And hopefully we'll start to be able to play soon. So, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Like I said, probably next episode, we'll be talking a little bit about the secret project, because all will be revealed, hopefully. Let's see here. I don't know why he would lie about me being his nephew, but oh well, that's... goodness. Anyway, thanks for everybody for coming by and for hanging out and chatting. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. If you want to see me on Twitch, I'll be on tomorrow night, twitch.tv/Tabletop Minions. And also on Friday as well. And I think that's everything. Thanks for watching.